Good evening and welcome to the West Hartford Public Schools Regular Board of Education meeting. It is not December the 5th. It is March the 5th, 2024. Charlotte, may you please begin by calling the roll?
Mr. Gagnon,
Here.
Mr. Goldman,
Here.
Dr. Harris,
Here.
Ms. Marimon,
Here.
Mrs. Nazarella,
Present.
Dr. Thomas Farquharson,
Here.
Mrs. Yagaloff,
Present.
Student Representative Liam Wright,
Here.
and Student Representative Chris Ramal.
Present.
Thank you. And Chris, may you please lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. And we do not have a revision to the agenda order, and we now will have public communications. This is an opportunity where we're able to hear from you, your thoughts, your concerns, and your suggestions. Each individual is allowed 3 minutes to speak, and we ask when you go to the podium to please share your name and your town of residence. Please be mindful of Charlotte, who will hold up a yellow card when you have 1 minute remaining in your time. And when your time is expired, you will see a red card, and we ask for you please to respectfully take your seat at that time. Please be aware that we are attentively listening to what is being shared. However, it is policy that we do not respond to comments as they are being made. With this being the first meeting of the month, we are receiving comments on both agenda and non-agenda items. However, for our awareness, to remind us of what tonight's agenda items are, it's the presentation of the Superintendent's 2024-2025 budget. We do have a list here with just one name on it, and that is Jeff, and pardon K, last initial. Jeff.
My name is Jeff Kivlin, reside in West Hartford on Stoner Drive. Currently have one child in the Duffy School District. First off, members of the board, thank you kindly for volunteering to take on these processes because it is oftentimes a very taxing on your lives. With that said, I'm here today to talk about class sizes, specifically from kindergarten to first grade and K through 3 at Duffy. Duffy is without a doubt the largest elementary school in this town. Right now, there are 5 kindergarten classes slated to go down to 4 first grade classes next year. That would put the class size at either 22 or 23 kids per class, which every study shows that K through 3 succeeds much greater, sub 20 kids per class. State of Connecticut has a 19.6 average class size. West Hartford is above that. This would put Duffy way above that mark. Within the town itself, we have schools with a K through 3 class size of 15, 16, or 17, where at Duffy it is 21, 22, 23. How is that equitable? Currently, there are 25 states that have policies addressing class sizes for kids K through 3. Connecticut has tried to pass that bill last year, I believe, or the year before, and it failed. They will be trying again. West Hartford has always considered itself a leader in education in the state of Connecticut, but we have not addressed that in this town of West Hartford. Currently, I believe the policy is to try and maintain sub 24, 24 or less. I'm here to challenge you. It's not good enough for these children. The teachers are taxed. 23 6-year-olds in a first grade class is way too much for a teacher to handle and give that individual attention. The teachers are challenged, they're struggling, and if we're looking for tenure and to retain the best talent possible, we have to help them out as well as help our children out. Thank you.
Thank you. That is the only name that I have listed here. However, is there anyone in the audience who would like to make a public comment, again, on both agenda and/or non-agenda items? Seeing none, we will continue with the agenda. Moving on now to non-staff communications and reports, and this is where we're able to hear from our student representatives sharing about their schools. Let us first hear about Hall, sharing by Liam, please.
Yes, much has occurred in the past week or so. To start, Pops and Jazz starts next weekend. The theme is Las Vegas, so you should get your tickets while you still can. We have conferences coming up on Wednesday and Thursday, and on Thursday we will be having a late start because of that. The boys basketball team won its first round game in the state tournament and plays Windsor tomorrow in their second round game, so we wish them much luck. The track and field New England Championships occurred this past weekend, and numerous records were broken, and we had some great performances. Anna Siciliano won the shot put and broke her school record. Our girls 4x8 team broke their school record and achieved fourth place. Our boys 4x8 team achieved fourth place as well and broke their school record. And the girls 4x4 team, I believe, got third and also broke their school record. So big congrats to them. Mock Trial has their next competition on Friday. The Coral Project just went to a coral reef convention where they fundraised for coral awareness. The trivia team, which is our school match fits, went to play in their round, and their show will air on TV on March 30th, so we'll have to look out for that. The CT Pro Star Invitational, which is for students who are involved in cooking, had their competition at Duncan Park where the Yard Goats play. We had our NHS blood drive today, which was very successful. I'm not sure exactly how many liters we raised, but I know that it was enjoyable, and people who donated received cake as a reward. And finally, Fox 61 came today to do a segment on Pops and Jazz and its success. All right, thank you.
Thank you, Liam. Wonderful things happening. And now we'll hear about Conard from sharing by Chris.
So for Conard, since this month's Women's History Month, this Friday we're having two panels for Women's History Month. One called the Women's Her Story Month panel, and the one for Women in STEM. And then for Les Mis, which is our play that's starting next weekend. That's starting next week. The first show will actually be this weekend, but it'll be a senior show for. Will actually be tomorrow night, but it'll be a senior show for any senior citizens living in the town or just around here. There'll be a preview of Les Mis for students tomorrow during second period, and the tickets are live for anyone to buy on connordrama.ludus.com. So for sports, boys basketball won their first round of states against East Hartford, and they're scheduled to play their next round against Daniel Hand. Girls basketball won the state state quarterfinal, are advancing to the state semifinal against Sacred Heart Academy this Friday. Boys ice hockey defeated Enfield in the quarterfinal of the states and will advance to the next round against New Melford. And then girls track placed third place overall at state opens. And then we also had our blood drive this past Friday, which was very successful, and we'd like to thank the EMS students and Miss Jennifer Vater, who helped set up the blood drive. Yeah, that's it for Conard.
Wow, another sharing of wonderful things happening. Thank you both so very much. And moving on now to unfinished business, which we do not have any of, and now we will proceed to new business, where we have presentation of the superintendent's 2024-2025 budget recommendations. Seeking a motion that the Board of Education receive the superintendent's recommended 2024-2025 education budget and begin the process of reviewing and modifying for final approval and adoption as the Board of Education budget at the April the 4th, 2024 Board of Education meeting. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Thank you, Jason. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Shannon. Discussion. Passing it to you, Mr. Vicinis.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it. Appreciate also the audience here this evening. So good evening to you, West Hartford community. Good evening, Board of Education. It is truly my honor to be able to present to you my recommendations for the 24-25 budget. And I would like to lead off by sort of just talking about the fact that as a Board of Education, this is likely one of the most critical responsibilities that you have, to collaborate with the superintendent in order to define those funding systems and streams that will help us to guarantee our mission to prepare and inspire all students. So we'll just pause for a moment. We'll deal with this technical. Had them both, lost them. Is it showing on podium? Excuse me one moment.
That's all right. We are used to this. We are used to flying by the seat of our pants and showing how flexible and versatile we can be.
So I fear that our projectors are gone into a temporary shutdown, and it may take them up to 5 or more minutes to recycle. So I can recommend a recess, or I can
Well,
go get us some visuals upstairs and have a shorter recess.
okay. All right.
Off a cool down now. The fans have stopped too.
So, yes, teammates, again, another opportunity to show our patience and flexibility. And so, with that, as we are working through the technical matters, I am making a motion that we recess for 5 minutes. Is there a second? Second. Thank you, Ethan. We're taking a 5-minute break. Thank you. But we have to do a modification with the minutes, actually, because the minutes from.
Not the minute.
Our presentation here is really to enable and to operationalize our mission to prepare and inspire all students. And what I'd like to ask you to do is to listen for 3 themes within my presentation this evening. The first of which you'll hear me talk about an increase in our special populations and the required supports for programming needs in order to support those students. You'll hear me talk a little bit about some challenges that we face relative to unfunded mandates from the state of Connecticut and our Department of Education. And then what I hope you'll hear most of all is the return on investment through the quality of the educational services that this budget provides and that we hope to continue. All of this is driven through your Board of Education goals, which is the means by which we do operationalize that mission. It's really through the programming, the resourcing of our classrooms, and the high-quality teachers that we're able to attract here in the district that we're able to advance the achievement for all students and to continuously work to reduce the disparities between and among groups. It's through our professional learning and the caring of our teachers and really the whole school community that we're able to nurture the intellectual, physical, and emotional well-being of students and our investments in our schools to create that safe space as well as a respectful learning community where all students are held to high expectations. And finally, as recently as last board meeting, we saw an amazing presentation where we're working to attract, retain, and develop a high-quality staff to include a diverse staff, providing them with the professional development, the resources, and the appropriate learning environments. And that really is what this budget is all about. It's about being able to operationalize these goals in service to our students and our students' attainment of the vision of the graduate. And it's the work that we do on a daily basis in order to help them to achieve these skills and these dispositions. So with that, I want to talk about who these students are, who we serve as a community. Based on our October 1st enrollment numbers, we have 9,155 students enrolled in in-district programs spread across our pre-K, our early education, and all the way through our post-secondary programming. In addition to that, there are 111 outplaced students, and our enrollment numbers since the beginning of school have actually grown. Looking at our enrollment as of March 1st, we're up to 9,317 students. It's actually a 1% increase from October 1st of last year, which is interesting because we've been talking for quite a while about decreasing enrollments. And we'll still see some of that based on where the enrollment has grown and where it has shrunk. But these 9,000 and change students, they come to us with varied experiences, varied strengths, and varied needs. And we see that with some of the demographics that are displayed. We have roughly 2,500 students who at home speak a language other than English, representing 72 different languages across the board. Now, among those, there are roughly 800, just shy of 800 students who qualify as English language learners. And that's up significantly from last year. Last year's figure as of October 1st was 705 English language learners. That's a 13% increase in that population. And you'll see later a driver in our budget relative to a position, an ESOL position previously funded under ESSER that we would seek to continue in order to support those students and reflect that increase. We see that roughly 46% of our students are students of color. That's up about 0.5% from the previous year. And it really informs our participation in things like the Teacher in Residence program and other initiatives that you heard about last month in the Increasing Educator Diversity presentation that are supported through our budget in order that our students can continue to see a reflection of themselves within the educators and the programming that we provide to them. Roughly 1 in 4 and an increasing number of our students are eligible for free and reduced price lunch. That's a 7% increase, an increase of roughly 150 students over last year. And these students are sometimes our students that are hardest to identify in terms of needs they might have and speak to the importance of a real close community to school and a range of wraparound services to be able to support them. In addition to the 1,801 students, or 19% of our students who receive special education services. That number of students is up 182 from last year, again, reflecting a need for a continued investment so that we can provide the services not only that we are legally obligated, but morally obligated to provide in order to ensure that these students can have the same opportunities as their non-disabled peers. So that's a picture of who we serve. The next question is kind of what we do. And I think over the course of the year, we talk about how it is that we go about the delivery of our educational mission, the strategies. But I wanted to be able to highlight for you some of the return on investment for that as it displays across the pre-K-12 curriculum inside of academics and the arts and extracurriculars. So as you see here, we've been featured nationally for excellence in programming and best practices in instructional practice for early childhood education. We have award-winning schools at the elementary level. At the state level, several schools recognized as schools of distinction, and a recent nationally recognized Blue Ribbon School. Our academic programming at the middle school is simply incredible, with students who this summer will be participating in international level academic competition for that literacy program you heard about. We've also boasted a student author in 8th grade who's now attending one of our high schools. We have gold medal winning high schools for participation and performance within the advanced placement program. We have incredible services that reach every child, not the least of which is our gold medal honors for unified soccer. Our state, regional, and national award-winning fine and performing arts program, whether we're talking about students who were recently recognized at the Connecticut Regional Scholastic Awards or the Essentially Ellington. And I look as recently as the two student presentations today to talk about all of the accolades that we've won on the athletic fields with the state championships, the participation in state finals, and our scholar athletes. This is simply a list of accolades from this year alone. And it is a demonstration of the quality of educational services and programming that happens. And so a question is, how do we do it? Well, let's first start with how we kind of pay for it, because we do it with realistically, aside from, I'll talk in a slide in a moment about the amazing dedication and incredible talent of our staff, but we also do it with relative efficiency. Looking here at this historical perspective, we're looking at a graph of per pupil expenditure for West Hartford Public Schools over a 50-year period. West Hartford's always been a place with excellent education, but you can see during the 1970s and the 1980s that we were among the top spending districts in terms of our per pupil expenditure. And over the course of 50 years, we've found dramatic efficiencies, and that average has come down to its lowest in 2015-16 when we were the 128th out of 169. At that point, at that low point in the graph, we were in the lowest 10% in terms of our per pupil spending. You can see that since that time, we've eked up a little bit. In 21-22, we were 92nd. Last year, we fell and we were 98th. And that 98th place last year puts us just above the lowest third in terms of per pupil expenditure. And what's more impressive about that is the return on investment is during those same period of years, we've consistently scored in the top third for our state assessments for third grade mathematics and literacy through 8th grade. So what's intended here is kind of a dual demonstration of not only a relative cost effectiveness, but to also underscore the achievement that we are able to mark under those same conditions. And so for a little bit of a additional perspective on the value of our education, I'd just like to compare the cost effectiveness of that per pupil expenditure last year, $19,748 per pupil, and what it would mean, what the savings is had we spent, say, at the state median of $8.2 million, or what the savings would be had we spent at our DERG average, a savings or a value of $6.3 million. And I know the question might be raised, well, we're a bigger district. Certainly there are economies of scale. Well, if we had spent at the average of school districts with at least 5,000 students, it would have cost an additional $3.2 million. So overall, our per pupil expenditure has demonstrated a genuine value. But more than that, there's an invisible value that I want to talk about that's not on the slide. And that's the savings to our consumers in the equivalent of $2.4 million in college coursework savings when we look at our advanced placement and our ECE seats from last year alone. Our students had participated in the equivalent of $2.4 million worth of college programming as determined by the in-state tuition cost and seat cost for those total combined participations. So we know that we're successful. We know that we're creating great value. The question is, how do we do it? And where does the money go? Our secret is really in that giant blue majority of our budget pie. Our secret is within salaries and benefits. It's our amazing teachers. It's our dedicated administrators. It's our talented and caring custodial staff, cafeteria workers, school security guards, school nurses, school counselors. It's the work that our educators and our support staff, all of our related service providers give and do every day for every child. But as you can see, we are a people organization. Our money goes toward really staffing our schools and putting trusted and caring adults in front of children. The 82% of our budget for our salaries and benefits is consistent with the prior year. But the other pieces of our budget, and some that do deserve some mention, not the least of which is tuition. Tuition is singled out because it's going to take up a slightly larger piece of the pie, increasing from 4% of the overall budget last year to 5%. And that's based on an increase in tuition rates for out-of-district placements, the number of students qualifying for the same, and funding shortfall in the excess cost grant from the state. And I'll talk a little bit more about that in a moment. Likewise, I'd simply point out, just for overview, where you see insurance, general insurance there on the left at the top, that's up slightly, creating a 1% greater segment of the pie based on our claims experience and our premium rates, basically insurance going up. Our transportation, while our overall transportation costs do demonstrate a dollar value increase, they take up less of the overall pie, 1% less, and that's simply based on us being in the second year of a recently negotiated contract. And last year there was a more steep step increase. This year the step increase is more modest. So smaller amount of the whole pie, but still a dollar value increase. And utilities take up less, and utilities are down 1%, consistent with moderated rates and more consistent usage across our districts. So what I'm going to try to do now is go through each one of those major budget drivers with you and provide you a little bit of additional detail. But I'll start with a description of how we budget in general, which is the use of what's called a roll forward budget. And a roll forward budget is where we assume if I take everything that I have today, all of my teachers and all of the programming, and expected to simply continue it without change, and adjust that for wage and salary increases, contract increases, utility and costs going up, and the cost of insurance and all of those things, what would that net? And that would net an overall increase of 11.3 million, or 6% overall increase as a starting point. And from there, we'll talk about each piece of that pie and what adjustments would be necessary from the current budget, just to roll forward what we have. So salaries. As I said, this is the biggest component of our budget overall, and salaries by themselves would have a 5.4% increase based on the negotiated contract agreements that have been undertaken previously across our 20 different bargaining units in service to our over 2,500 employees here within the school district. Medical expense increases themselves go up by roughly 10%, 2.5 million, based on an estimated premium increase of 5% for the state partnership plan, assuming the same staffing levels that we have currently this year. And then pension and other benefits provide a net decrease. There is a slight increase in the long-term disability and the Social Security costs. However, our contribution to the town pension plan is reduced by about $500,000, giving us a net 3.2% decrease overall. Transportation, I mentioned. Transportation does have an increase, a 2.9% increase just based on execution of the second year of the contract. Again, our utility expenses will provide us some savings at a roughly 3% decrease from their current costs, for the reasons I mentioned earlier. But the big one here on the page is the tuition expenses. It's an overall significant 20% increase. And there are two unfunded mandates which lie behind this cost to us as a district. The first of which is the change in age of services for students who qualify, those with an IEP, but you have to qualify for education to age 22. And the new law, I think we've mentioned it several times here in the past, requires that we educate the students all the way through the full school year in which they attain their 22nd birthday, where previously the law was that upon reaching the age of 22, the students' services would stop. That creates a modest increase in terms of the length of service we need to provide, but the biggest increase here has to do with the excess cost shortfalls at the state reimbursement, which is the last bullet. Our excess cost contribution, as I've explained, I think in notes in the past, kicks in when we have to contribute more than 4.5 times the per pupil expenditure, roughly $90,000. So when the cost of education exceeds $90,000, the expectation is the state would reimburse us at 100%. And there's language in that says if the state cannot fund the full 100%, they must fund us at least 85%. And unfortunately, that fund has been flat funded this year and has not been fully funded, to my knowledge, yet. And so we can expect a shortfall that we need to plan for anywhere between $1.5 to roughly $2.5 million, based on if you expected the 85% or if you really anticipated the full 100%. So that's funding that we know is not there. The state's provided us with the percentage that we should expect. And so we have increased this line item by $1.5 million in order to account for that. And then finally, all other expenses increased by roughly 7.4%. The big driver there, more than 3/4 of it, is due to the general insurance increase and worker compensation costs. Our insurance allocation from the town increased by roughly $600,000 due to claim experience and premium rates. So again, in summary, those are the major drivers within a roll forward that would create a roughly 6% increase. From there, I want to talk to you about modifications to the budget that I am proposing and recommending to adjust and provide some net decrease to that roll forward. And it starts with, realistically, here's a look at a number of staffing changes, the first of which is driven by enrollment changes. In this budget proposal, I am projecting a decrease of 4.5 positions from what's current staffing in our current budget. That does not account for an additional 21.5 positions that are in the ESSER grant that would not be continued. So the total volume of these positions, if I look at the bottom line, it represents a decrease of 10.6 overall. There are additional 21.5 individuals currently employed with us that would also be reduced under this budget proposal. So it's rather significant in terms of the impact. However, the ESSER money is not calculated into any of these percentage changes relative to your budget, really only your last year's original budget compared to this year's budget. Those enrollment changes are spread across elementary, middle, and high school, actually with middle schools gaining a little bit and some slight reductions at elementary and high school for a 4.5 net overall. Special instruction, which includes and is primarily driven through special education, but can also, we can talk about that is special education entirely, excuse me, is showing an increase overall, and a lot of that driven by those numbers that you saw earlier. There are several positions that came up as an unanticipated need that we were able to fund through ESSER that we've retained in this budget. It's inclusive of things like a teacher of the deaf, 2 social workers, a pre-K resource teacher, all previously funded under ESSER. And then it's inclusive of things that we're projecting as needs based on our enrollments, such as an additional speech and language pathologist, an additional intensive academic teacher, a resource teacher at the middle school, 1 each for King Philip and for Sedgwick, as well as a clinician for our SEP program. In total, we're looking to add 9.3 FTEs to the special education team. The next item is driven primarily through some significant changes at the elementary, and it's a rather significant change that I'll take some time to explain. We have a total of 9 additional school counseling positions funded under ESSER that we put in in the second year for the 2-year mark. 5 of them at the elementary and 4 of them at the middle school. And they are not among the positions, those additional, and I misspoke, it's 8 positions, not 9, 7.8 technically positions. Not among the positions that we're able to fund in this budget under this current proposal. And therefore, we recognize that we'd be taking something from our elementary schools they've had for the last 2 years that has demonstrated significant benefit during a time of significant need. And we want to ensure that we can backfill our elementary schools with that some level of support in the absence of what's been provided additionally for the past 2 years. And so with that, I'm proposing an administrative restructure whereby we provide each elementary school with an assistant principal. And the responsibilities of that assistant principal would lie heavily within student regulation, student behavior management, management of special education, and 504. To offset that cost, I would propose the elimination of the 11 curriculum specialists, which would be a rather significant shift. And it is certainly in no way, shape, or form representative of any undervaluing of the amazing work that our curriculum specialists have done. It's really looking at the evolving role that they, in their teacher leader positions, have had to take on some of that work, if not a significant part of that work, in addition to, or perhaps at the exclusion of, some of the curriculum work. The positive news story is that with that piece is that those individuals would be eligible, the majority of them would be eligible to potentially apply in for the elementary assistant principal positions, or have a position within a grade level classroom. But what it does, what the restructuring does, is it enables our elementary principals to therefore really take on the role, having the ability to put aside some of the administrative tasks as it relates to student discipline or attendance at a PPT, and be able to position them as the key instructional leaders in the district, and to go in and take on those curricular tasks that they were previously sharing with their CSs. That restructure is further offset because the one-for-one trade does not costs money, does not save money, is further offset by a reduction of department supervisors at the secondary level and within pupil services. So we would reduce science, social studies, and world language from 2 department supervisors to 1, and we would reduce 1 department supervisor, or 0.9 of a department supervisor, in the special education department. Seeing that work kind of picked up by the elementary APs. And finally, we would install an assistant director to Melissa Caballero within pupil services, so that she had a set of hands, eyes, and ears to assist her in the work and to continue to work on program evaluation and program efficiencies in the coming year, given the growing size of that department. In total, that administrative restructure nets a potential savings of about $50,000 or about 2.1 positions. That was a big one. The next piece under program delivery is looking at a number of specialized programs for other services, to include our teacher in residence program. I would recommend continuing to budget for that with one position in the teacher in residence program for the coming year. The reduction of one reading specialist, merging responsibilities for literacy coaching K through 8. The inclusion of a .8 ESOL teacher previously funded under ESSER into our general fund. The cutting of a math teacher at the middle school through program efficiencies. The slight reduction of a counselor at the secondary level, and transferring of some funds from the general fund into appropriate grants for a net savings of 1.3 positions, or roughly $181,000. And finally, under support services, through work with both general ed and special ed, we feel that we can contain some of our costs and cut back in our paraprofessionals and our teaching assistants by roughly 12 positions, for a grand total of 10.6 fewer positions and an approximate savings or modification to the existing budget, to the roll forward budget, in the amount of $237,000. So putting those pieces together, beginning with a roll forward budget, which reflects an increase of approximately 6%, looking at those modifications as described to you just moments ago, I would propose to you an expenditure increase in the amount of $11.1 million, or a 5.8% increase overall, for a grand total of a 24-25 proposed budget of $201,303,856. And I would point out that while the state has not supported us with the excess cost grant, they did accelerate their funding to the educational cost sharing. This is a grant managed by the town. West Hartford will receive next year about $25 million. That's a $2 million increase. So while that money is not something that lives within the Board of Education budget, I share it because of the nature of those funds. I share that to demonstrate a net impact of roughly 4.8%. However, to be dramatically transparent, what you would be receiving as my recommended budget is a 5.8% increase in the amount of $11,112,000. With that, I do want to return to why we are here and what we do, and what the return on this very significant investment means for the students of West Hartford and our overall community, making us a destination district specifically for the educational services that we are able to provide and the community that we support here in and around us. Our next steps, we have a series of budget workshops, and it is during these budget workshops that we will spend a dramatic time unpacking each of these line items and major expenditures in the budget. It provides us time between now and March 13th for you to review those very thick binders that are before you. All of this budget information is posted on the district website within the next 14 minutes. I believe it's set to go for 8 p.m. tonight so that the public at home can also review this information. Following board workshop number 1, there will be a public hearing, a second workshop to have any additional questions, any additional requests for information, and then we will bring a final recommendation before you on April the 4th for a vote, and at that point, we turn it over to our friends and colleagues in the town council for hopeful adoption on April the 24th. That is the presentation of my recommended budget, and if you have any clarifying questions, I'm happy to entertain them.
All right, thank you very much. So teammates, we have received the information, a lot of information, and as has been described, the next several weeks we'll be going over it in more details. However, if there are any high-level questions at this time, high level, again, we'll have an opportunity for more granular details at our first board workshop, but any high-level questions or comments at this time? Yes, Claire.
So you mentioned that the roll forward budget did not assume the 21 positions for ESSER, is that correct?
Yes, in reality, there are 31, I believe 31.5 positions in ESSER. So when, that's an additional $5 million. So I did not assume that I had that $5 million and had to cut from $5 million. I assumed just, hey, I have the money that was in the 22-23 budget. Let me roll that forward, see what everything costs, cut from there. And then what we had to do is we looked at every single expenditure under the ESSER budget and decided which of those are things that we must keep and which of those are things that, while we would like to keep them, we may not be able to, given the impact really of the shortfall of that funding, and what that would mean to have to to walk in and have to add an additional $5 million to an already significant budget.
Okay, couple more. Can you, you said 5.4 was additional staffing and the negotiated contract. Are those two numbers broken up, or can you, additional staffing and the negotiated budget are two different things? Is that broken up anywhere?
It is. When we do the board workshop, what you may recall is you'll see a page that says, here's the adopted budget, and then here's the actual staffing for that. So things that happen, and the best example I can give is, let's say in the spring where we are now, we anticipate we're going to have 205 elementary sections. And then somewhere between July and August, we see a section break. We get some move-ins, and we have to create an additional elementary section that was not anticipated in the budget. We will certainly staff that. We will find, savings elsewhere in order to pay for that and not be over budget by the end of the year. And then when we roll forward, we operate from the current staffing levels. So we operate as if, all right, well, those students were in kindergarten, they're going to be to first grade. And then, so we start with that basic number, but we do an analysis of the enrollment and the projections, and we say, okay, do we anticipate that we'll need the same number of sections that we currently have, or do we cut backward, or do we add on to based on what we see? So a second example of that, at the middle school, we anticipated we'd need, I think it was a half team. We ended up after the budget passed, looking at the enrollment trends. We often lose students to middle school from 5th to 6th grade. We didn't necessarily lose as many as we thought, and so we ended up with one of the schools fully staffing a team, and we had to pull in 2 additional FTEs in order to do so, and we maintained those in the current budget. So that reflects technically as an add, because even though we already have those folks, they weren't in the adopted budget from last year, if that makes sense. We'll see that in tremendous detail when we go through on each of the pages, and you'll be able to see that broken down by elementary classroom teacher, by specials area. You'll be able to see it at secondary level broken down by department, and then you'll see it certainly within special education as well.
And one final. So with the unfunded mandate, the switch from 21 to 22 happened 3 or 4 years ago? Is that?
Happened on July 1.
No, the
This year.
22.
Oh, it's changing it to 22 previously?
Yeah.
I don't have the exact number of years ago, but it was a few years back, yes.
Right, and that again was unfunded, but it also, we didn't have as high a population in the post-secondary.
Yes, and it's, you know, I want to be clear, the decision makes sense and is the best thing for families in terms of their planning. The challenge with it was the fact that it was passed and expected to be implemented on July 1, and school districts, our school district, all school districts had already set their budget. And so it created a change that we were unable to program for in advance. Therefore requires an explanation this year as a contributing factor to why that particular item is going to go up so significantly, because many of our students that are in need of those services are in outplacements in tuition programs.
Right, thank you.
Ethan?
I had a couple questions. The first one was, could you explain again the ECS funding? I didn't quite understand that.
The educational cost sharing or the excess cost grant? I think the excess cost.
Is the money, you referenced $2.2 million.
Yeah, so that's educational cost sharing. That's money that the state provides to school districts to support basically educational costs in general. I won't go into the full description, but that money goes to the town. It doesn't go to the school district, into the board budget. I share that information only by way of reference because when we talk to our legislative delegation, and I want to give the legislature the credit that they deserve, we'll talk about the obstacle that the flat funding and the excess cost grant, what obstacle that creates. But that's because the state chose to accelerate and support, a different form of educational funding by way of educational cost sharing. The challenge for us as a Board of Education is that that support that they've given us is not reflected in our budget. The benefit to us as a community is that money does go to our town. So at the end of the day, our taxpayers are benefiting from the good work of the legislature. It's just that it's not going to surface this way. So I wanted to at least demonstrate the net impact that would create a 1% decrease for us if we could own that money, but we don't. So when we vote on our budget, we're voting on the $201 million, the 5.8% increase. But I want to at least reference that the legislature has done some work that will support the taxpayer in general, and that will be seen more through the town council.
Theoretically, that money is going for whatever the town council decides.
I don't have the specifics on how they use that, but
Sorry about that.
yeah. But they have supported us. There's a lot of infrastructure supports that they do for our schools and things that they're taking on. So
No, I understand. I don't see it as a reduction. Question, just for my own understanding. On page 1, the graph, it says 130 at the bottom. Is that just the way the graph worked, or is it looking at 130 school units? I know there's 169 towns, but.
yeah, it just didn't. I think that was just for not getting all the way down to 169. I can share that it was. Let me just look at my notes one more time.
Yeah, it's just for my own understanding.
The lowest that we have ever gone is 128th. So we technically dipped slightly below that line. I don't know if it printed that way. That's as far as West Hartford went. We never dipped below 128th, so the graph just went that far.
So, okay.
Yeah.
Then the last year at the end, the state cut back funding for special needs. This year you have a number. Is that a locked number, or is that still open to what may happen? I'm just trying to get a
I want to
probability.
just make sure I understand. In terms of our special ed population, do
Right.
we have a lock number?
Well, do you feel more comfortable on the probability of that number that you've been given versus,
Oh, I see,
Compared to last year.
the reimbursement rate.
yeah, because
Yeah, 68%.
Good.
I feel as comfortable as I can feel.
Okay.
Pretty comfortable, but I'm not betting my mortgage on it, but
All right, I'm just curious.
no, it's a fair question.
And I can't read my writing, so I'm good. Thank you.
Gail.
Thanks. I had two questions. On the medical expenses, where you're showing a variance of 10%, is that a final number, or is that going to be determined? I'm assuming that's like health insurance and things like that for,
I'm sorry, give me a page reference.
it's on page 3.
You're in the executive summary?
Superintendent's budget summary.
I
Yeah, I
got you.
think so.
Thanks. Medical expenses, I want to say, are, we start with the increase in medical premiums from the state partnership plan itself. But medical expenses and those percentages that we get from the state partnership plan, they're based on claims. So they're a projection in some regard, and we'll get information throughout the year that helps to adjust that. But overall, we've been given information, and I believe we expect updated information by May in terms of if the premium is going to change from 5%, either lower or higher. But we started out in the budget process when we began this months and months ago, anticipating a higher value. I think we started somewhere near 7 to 10%. And as we've gotten information from the state partnership plan about where they expect their premiums to land, it's come down to that value. But overall, there are claims that are based on that also make it volatile. But we have a lot of kind of a history in terms of where that goes, but that can come up or down based on that, based on
So
what
I
happens.
just want to make sure I'm understanding it. When you wrote 10% there, does that mean that it's increasing 10% from last year?
Correct. That's the comparison of the roll forward to last year. So that's where that 10%.
So you're anticipating that the health costs will increase by 10%?
It's actually showing as a, the medical cost is showing as a 10% increase of roughly 2.5 million, and the
But that's not a final number, meaning you at some point in May will get a more finalized number on that.
correct. And we can go through that, perhaps maybe give you more of a rationale as to how that's determined and what that looks like when we do the budget workshop. I'll take a note.
Okay. And then my other question was, and I know we've talked about this a lot, when the kids that are going out for special tuition, after they reach, I think it's like 4.5 times what we're paying per student, I thought that the state does kick in 100%, but then you did say something about 85%.
So the law indicates, and the intent is that the state would kick in 100%. The state's never been able to, so they increased funding years ago, a couple of years back, more than a couple, I guess, and the promise was that we'll achieve a minimum of 85%. They couldn't achieve the 85% with the funding that they have, so they tiered the reimbursement rates based on what they felt communities could pay, and West Hartford is a more affluent community overall, so we were at the lowest tier of reimbursement, which was supposed to be, I believe, 75%. We ended up getting reimbursed last year at only 70%, because that was all or 74%, that was all the money could bear, and then it was flat funded for this year, so instead of getting that, we're projected to get 68% reimbursement. The thing that I'm glad you brought the question up, though, because the thing that I wanted to mention, just as a return on investment, a good news story, is really through the dedicated work of our pupil services department and our and one department supervisor in particular that oversees all of our outplacements. We returned a total of 32 students to the district last year. That's roughly a 25% savings from what we would otherwise be spending. And the value in that is not just in the financial savings. The value in that really is having those students back in our district and being able to have them right here in West Hartford, educated close to home. And in all reality, the feedback that we seem to get from a lot of the families is that the services that we're providing them are better than what they're getting in some of these private inpatient places. So in the areas where we can provide those services, we're very excited to be able to do so.
Any other questions, high level? Ethan?
Yeah, I just remembered, the kindergarten program, would that have added additional costs if the state hadn't changed things?
If they had, yeah, we do anticipate a one-year bump based on the change in entry for kindergarten to reduce some sections. So it accounts for, we had 5 sections in elementary being paid for out of the ESSER grant, and we have, I think the slide said we're anticipating, I think the elementary portion of that was roughly 1.5 or 2 sections. So we anticipate maybe somewhere between 6 or 7 fewer sections overall. Some of them in kindergarten and a few of them at at different grades. And that's based on the enrollment projection report that you received very recently, but that's numbers that we continue to watch from now right up until the start of school.
Any other questions? All right. Well, thank you. And teammates, we knew that this time would come, and we knew that from 4 years ago in 2020. We were fortunate to have additional funding, but we knew at some point in time we would have a an opportunity to have robust discussion. And so we look forward to coming together again. Thank you so very much for the proposed budget. Moving on now to staff communications and reports. Typically, we'd have the superintendent's report. I will follow suit and pass the baton, but you may have already shared.
That really represents what I wanted to share and have you really focus on this evening. I'll mention, it is a difficult time of year. We're seeing it across the district. I think our number, just for context, is fairly in line with our DIRG. Perhaps, I believe our DIRG average is somewhere near 5.5. And it is, not every district has yet reported where they've landed. Many districts are ahead of us, but some have yet to report. The only other thing I would share in my report is we have really done a lot of work to scrutinize what is there, recognizing the significant shortfall that ESSER provides for us and having planned for it. So what's in front of you is what I really feel is necessary to be able to continue to run our schools at the level that our community, I think, has come to expect. And I hope that between some highlights that I've shared and what we've talked about here at the board table over the course of this year and many years previous demonstrates really the value of how those dollars are spent.
Thank you. Moving on to staff reports and board discussions. We do not have any. Routine matters, approval of the minutes, seeking a motion that the Board of Education approve the minutes of the regular Board of Education meeting of February the 21st, 2024. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Thank you, Jason. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Claire. Any discussion? All of those in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Any abstain? The ayes have it. And before we move on, I do have another motion with respect to the minutes. So back on December the 5th, we received the educational specification for 6 projects being submitted for the State of Connecticut school construction grant process. We adopted these unanimously, but the minutes did not reflect this and need to for the state grant process. In order to rectify this, I ask that we pass a motion to modify the December the 5th, 2023 minutes to reflect that the board unanimously adopted the educational specifications for the following school construction projects. The projects are Hall High School roof replacement, A, B, and C wings. Brayburn Elementary School roof replacement, main roof. Bugby Elementary School roof replacement, main roof. Webster Hill Elementary School window replacement. Duffy Elementary School fresh air ventilation and air conditioning improvements. And Webster Hill Elementary School fresh air ventilation and air conditioning improvements. I am making this motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Shannon. Discussion. So again, teammates, we already had the presentation. We voted unanimously. This is just a matter of crossing our T's and dotting our I's. But nonetheless, are there any questions or comments?
Can I make one fast comment? I just want to apologize. It was left off the minutes. I take responsibility for that. We did go back and review the tape and watched you all vote. It is online, so I want to, in case you've forgotten, I just want to make sure that you're all aware of that.
Thank you. Gail?
Yeah, I just want to clarify, are you talking about the capital improvement projects?
No, this was, if you recall, we had a presentation by Bob Palmer, and I believe Andy was there as well. They presented about a grant, and the pieces that were just named is what the grant was going towards. And to fulfill grant obligations, they have to submit the minutes from it being voted on. So we want to make sure the minutes are accurate. Any other discussion? All of those in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Any abstain? The ayes have it. Thank you so much. Now moving on to information and reports. Board members, do we have any communications and reports from other organizations or boards? Seeing none. Any other information or discussions? Seeing none. Moving on to, and I just want to say hello to all of you. I should have done that at the beginning. It's wonderful to see a sea of wonderful educators, and thank you so much because you are the reason why we're here. So thank you again for all that you do. Moving on to future business. Announcement of future meeting dates. On Wednesday, March the 13th, 2024, we'll have our budget workshop number 1 at 7 o'clock here at the Town Hall in room 314. Followed by Tuesday, March the 19th, 2024, regular Board of Education meeting at 7 o'clock here at the Town Hall in room 314. And then again on Wednesday, March the 27th, 2024, we'll first have our Board of Education public hearing at 7 o'clock, followed by the budget workshop number 2 here at the Town Hall in room 314. And then on Thursday, April the 4th, again, that's a Thursday, April the 4th, 2024, our regular Board of Education meeting where we'll have adoption of the Superintendent's 2024-2025 budget at 7 o'clock here in room 314 at the Town Hall. Do we have a request for any future agenda items? Seeing none, do we have any visitors that would like to make any comments? Seeing none, we do not have an executive session, therefore seeking a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Thank you, Shannon. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Ethan. Meeting adjourned at 8:10.